On today's show for Locked On Cavs for Wednesday, January 21st, I am joined by Fear the Swords and Write Down Euclid's Jackson Flickinger to talk about NBA All-Star 2024 and the things he saw, because he was one of, if not the only, media member present during the weekend.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
For those of you who may not know, I am Evan Dammarell, one of the co-hosts of Locked On Cavs. I run Write Down Euclid, and joining me today, as I mentioned before, is Jackson Flickinger, who writes with me at Write Down Euclid and also works at Fear the Sword under Chris as well. But before we dive into our conversation about All-Star, I just want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your best bet wins. Just visit fantool.com/lockedon to get started. Jackson, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me back on. It's good to be back from Indy. Indy was fun, but it's also fun to sleep in your own bed. So I've been doing that. So that's been great.
Well, that's fair. Like, it is always underrated. Like, whenever I have covered games on the road, whether it was the trip to Salt Lake I took last year or the trip to Brooklyn I took last year, you do miss your own bed, your own shower, your own routine in your own space after a while, especially just because hotel rooms are so confining and the chaos of All-Star on top of it. How was that for you? This was your first time covering All-Star. I just was curious, how was that experience for you?
It was definitely good. I definitely didn't know what to expect, but it was a lot of fun. It would have been more fun if Indy got some snow. It only got about 3 inches of snow on Friday, but like a lot of this, the city didn't really handle the snow well, especially the surrounding Indiana cities. They were the freeways were basically shut down. There were a bunch of cars off the side of the road that spun out. Like they clearly don't get the snow that Northeast Ohio gets. So it was very tough to get in. Like the 4.5 hour drive turned into a 6.5 hour drive on Friday. So that wasn't fun. I wasn't able to get to the Rising Stars game because, I missed that window. But that was, other than that, the weekend was great. I guess the game itself could have been just a little bit better, but, that's a separate conversation. But like the weekend itself, all of the events, it was great to be there. It was great to see everybody and just experience that for the first time. Was really something that I've always wanted to do, and I'm glad that I can check that off my list.
And speaking of experiences, if you don't follow Jackson's work online or on his show, The Junkyard Pod, you can check him out at Twitter on Jax Flickinger X, if I guess you're more brand conscious. Jackson's a Sam Merrill truther. We talk about it quite a bit on the show, maybe sometimes in jest, or saying like, oh, maybe they should have played Sam Merrill, but then whenever Sam Merrill has a big night, the first time he had a big one for the Cavs, Jackson leaned over to me and said, "Can I write about Sam Merrill?" And I'm just like, yes, he's the focus of this game. But more so the fact, since you were like the only Cleveland member there, and you had noted like Donovan Mitchell's wearing 5, did it kind of blow your mind when you saw the Money Merrill jersey come out during the 3-point contest?
So if you would have told me a couple weeks ago when it was announced that Donovan Mitchell was going to be in the 3-point contest, and then he said after the game that he's only doing it because of Sam Merrill, I wouldn't have been surprised if you would have told me then that, oh yeah, he's going to be wearing a Merrill jersey. Like I would have said, oh yeah, that's like a really nice touch. But actually being there and in the moment, it was kind of surreal, especially because this was in Lucas Oil Stadium. We were in they put press in like the 300 level, which is not very close because it's a football stadium. It's not a basketball arena. Yeah. So we were pretty far away, and Donovan, what he does is when he warms up, he takes off his like warm up shirt and he just has his jersey on. So there's about right after they announced all the contestants, they'd had like a 2-minute warm up during like the commercial break. And he took off his warm up, and I saw it was a number 5 jersey, but I also saw it was a 2021 City Edition uniforms, which obviously neither he nor Merrill wore. So I was really confused as to like what the number 5 was, and I was pretty far away. And when he turned around, I could tell that what it said on top wasn't Sam, but I thought underneath it was Merrill. So I was like, there's no way he's actually wearing a Sam Merrill jersey, because like I have to be making this up because of who I am, because I've been on the Sam Merrill train since he's been playing with the Charge last year. So I was kind of in disbelief. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's a Merrill jersey, but I don't want to tweet that it's a Sam Merrill jersey and it's like a J.R. Smith jersey or something like that. Like that would have made me, I would have felt pretty stupid. But once I was able to confirm that it was a Money Merrill jersey, it was a pretty surreal moment for me. And I can't imagine kind of how it felt for Sam to kind of, if he was watching the turn on the TV and just see that, oh, Donovan Mitchell's wearing a custom Money Merrill jersey, like that's crazy. And I think that's a really, it's like an underrated thing that Mitchell was willing to go out of his way to promote somebody who, as much as I like Sam Merrill, is really on the outside of the rotation. He is a fringe NBA player in terms of he's not on a guaranteed deal for next year even. You know, he's making near the minimum salary. So it says a lot that somebody of Donovan Mitchell's stature took time to kind of recognize him in the biggest moment that he had this whole weekend, because, you know, when he was out there for the 3-point contest, he's the center of attention. He wasn't the center of attention at all during the All-Star game because he's sharing the court with 9 other guys. So it's really something that I think really shows the character of Donovan Mitchell, that he would take that moment to really shine the spotlight on a teammate that really the rest of the world doesn't really know. Like, if you're just a casual Celtics fan tuning in, do you know who Sam Merrill is? Probably not. You know, and I think that's really cool for him to do that.
No, I was, when I saw the initial tweet that you said it appears Donovan Mitchell's wearing number 5, I'm thinking, well, it could be J.R. Smith or
Right.
It could be Sam Merrill. But then you said the year the jersey was, and I'm like, well, Donovan wasn't even on the team when those jerseys were available. And I'm like, who wore number 5 that year? But then you're like, oh no, it's a Sam Merrill jersey. I'm like, interesting. But more so the fact, I did chuckle and I did think of you, because when I was editing your story with the 3-point contest and you opened with Donovan saying, I apologize to Sam Merrill and his family. As a Sam Merrill truther and just believer, did you accept the apology?
I didn't accept the apology. I felt that it wasn't really my place to do, but I felt that he needed to issue an apology, and if he didn't issue it, I would have asked for one. So he really just saved me a question. That's why I didn't have to say, Donovan, do you apologize to Sam Merrill? He just came out. That was the first thing he did. He walked. So like the way the All-Star game is set up, that's like after.
Paint a picture for everyone, just so they have an understanding of a little bit of the media fracas that is the All-Star.
Yeah, so it's a complete free-for-all everywhere. But after, so what they do is right after each competition, they would bring people to what they would call a mixer room, where essentially it's just kind of like a big conference room that they just set up tables for everybody. So they would do, the losers of an event would all go to one room, and then the winners or winner of the event would go to like the press conference room. So once I found out that Donovan Mitchell was eliminated, I had to, go from my 300 level all the way to the basement to get to this, room that he would be in. So I didn't see the rest of the 3-point contest once he was gone. So I got there, and then there was only a few other media people there for any of the other losers, just because the Sabrina and Steph competition was going on right then. And I think that was the highlight of the whole weekend. And I think everybody kind of felt that too. So even people who were even like Jalen Brunson didn't have much media there. There was actual New York media. So they weren't really there wasn't a whole lot of people in there. So it was really just me and one other guy from, I believe, New Zealand was there just to ask Donovan some questions about Joe Ingles. So that was something. But so Donovan just kind of looked at the very few people that were in there, and he just looked at us and said, what questions could you possibly have? I just, missed a couple shots. What are you going to say? Well, why, what, ask me oh, why did I miss shots? And then he's like, well, I do want to say something. I want to, and there's a little camera set up, and he pointed directly at the camera and was like, I want to apologize to Sam Merrill and his family for letting him down. That wasn't how I wanted to come out and shoot, and I am sorry. Will you please accept my apology? So that was the first thing that Donovan did when he got there, unprompted. So that was pretty funny, and I thought that was one of the highlights of the entire weekend.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm also glad you didn't have to deal with the chaos and got home safe with all the cars off the road. But let's hit pause in this conversation. We're going to talk about more about what Jackson maybe saw, heard, just noticed behind the scenes. Because, yeah, when you're covering All-Star, there is a certain degree of separation compared to what people maybe see on TV, or if you're able to attend the events in person, because you get to go into the bowels of the arena and interact with all these different guys at once. But you know the drill. We got to pay the bills, so quick ad break. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA and also the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is also brought to you by LinkedIn. When hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of over 1 billion professionals, making it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and they do all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates, so it's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows the small businesses are wearing many hard hats, and they may not have the time or resources to hire, so they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. LinkedIn even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier, quicker, and you can get your hire sooner than you wanted. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we are back with more Locked On Cavs. I am Evan Dammarell. Jackson Flickinger is with me. Jackson, let's talk more. We talked about Money Merrill. That was obviously that. I agree. The Sabrina versus Steph competition was the highest of the high. You got to witness the highest scoring performance in NBA All-Star history, much to much people's disappointment and frustration. But what were some of the things that maybe people weren't aware of, like conversations, interactions, the media availability? I know Nikola Jokic said he wishes he was with his horses. Yes. What were some of the things you maybe saw or heard that maybe people aren't fully aware of, since it's not, in front of our faces on TV?
I think going along with the Jokic thing, Jokic and Luka, I think maybe the best friends to ever exist. I think that was pointed out on the broadcast, some of the hijinks that they were doing. But in media day, they were both just constantly talking to each other and interrupting each other's press conferences. So, I would say that if Luka was to leave the Mavericks, I think he would love to play with his pal Jokic. So maybe that's one of the things that I definitely noticed. Donovan is somebody who, like, he has a really good, I feel like, relationship with everybody in the league. I think there was times where he was joking around a lot with, like, Jalen Brunson, Jalen Brown. So I think Tyrese Maxey's another one that he was constantly talking to and stuff. So I think he has a really good job of, like, he just connects with people in a way that I think that other superstars don't really do so. I wouldn't say that, because he's talking to Jalen Brunson, he wants to be on the Knicks and wants to be his teammate. Like, I'm not saying that or anything, but I think it's just, he's somebody who is really personable. And I think if you're going to have him as the leader of your team, you want somebody who other guys seem to really like. So I think that's something that's really comes out in All-Star Weekend, because you get to see them interact with so many new and different people. But one of the things that I'm definitely going to take away, and something that most people probably don't even know happened, was like the G League All-Star game, the G League Next Up game. Imani Bates, he had a pretty impressive game, and the G League All-Star game was actually competitive in the way it was set up. But more than that, he spent about 5 to 10 minutes after the G League game talking to Dan Gilbert, who was sitting courtside at the G League All-Star game, which is really, like, I didn't see Dan Gilbert anywhere else that weekend. Not saying he wasn't at the All-Star game, but it's really odd for the owner of an NBA team and a billionaire to go to a G League All-Star game and to sit courtside and really be invested in the game. So I think that Dan is really invested in Imani, and I think Imani, I talked to Imani afterwards about what he was like, so what did, like, you and Dan talk about? And he just said he was asking Dan what he needs to do to, like, play at the next level. And I was like, well, I'm not sure if Dan's your coach or talent evaluator, but, I guess those are good questions too. Yeah. Go directly to the big boss, So anyway, but I thought that was really interesting that, like, he, like, I'm sure he knows who Dan Gilbert is, but he definitely, like, took the time to be, like, respectful and, like, hear him all the way out and, like, talk to him and stuff like that. And I think that's really interesting from both perspectives, from both Imani and Dan's perspective, that they're both really kind of, like, they really know each other and they're really supporting each other, kind of. So that's definitely noteworthy, because we've seen in the past how Dan kind of gets guys, like, the rumors about how he was really influential in them wanting to get Sexton and coaches in the past and all this stuff. So that's definitely a storyline to monitor this year, next year, the year after, as long as Imani's here.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty fair evaluation. It is interesting just because Dan is people are aware who Dan Gilbert is at this point. He's one of the wealthiest men in the world after Quicken went public with stock options. But
yeah,
it is surprising that, one, the setup at the G League All-Star game, like you said, is at a convention center. It had that street ball vibe to it. Like, there were seats and things like that, but a lot of people were standing the whole time. And just like you said, like, I saw that picture, I was like, that's interesting. Like, just having that conversation with Dan Gilbert. And I think Imani's on the right path. And I think, maybe picking the brain of trying to get to that level, it's tricky just because the Cavs are so loaded 1 through 10 rotation wise. But no, I think he's just got the right mindset. But
yeah, and like, Dan hasn't been at a ton of Cavs games this year, and it's been that way since his health issues really kind of started coming up. So it's just really, like, him going to a game kind of is, like, newsworthy at this point, let alone going to like a G League game there, where it was like, it was really surreal kind of, because it's like a convention. So it was in a convention center, and it was, we all saw the videos and pictures of like the court at the airport in Indy, where it's just like, like it looks kind of out of place. It
was a similar setup to that.
Yeah, kind of. But then they put temporary bleachers up on the side that you could see on TV, and then on the other side was just kind of chairs, and those chairs were all for like team employees, but anybody could walk by them. So it wasn't like it was like any security. Like, I was standing right behind the Cavs team section, but it wasn't because I had credentials or anything. Like, anybody who just showed up for free could just walk behind there. So it was just kind of a really like, it was a super relaxed vibe to it, where it was like more relaxed than like Summer League. So just kind of like, for that to be one of the games that Dan goes to was just really surprising to me, where it was like, when he came in, I was like, there's no way that's actually like Dan Gilbert here for this. So because it's one thing like the Rising Stars game, would be more understandable. I don't know. I'm not sure if he was or wasn't there, because I did not make it to that. But
yeah, I don't know if he was or wasn't there either. And even if he was at the Rising Stars game, it's a different location. You could have a box or something like that, or something a little more discreet, just because, like you said, he does go to Cavs games. He has his own designated seats. More often than not, he's been raffling them off lately, mostly because of ongoing health issues and recovery from his stroke. But let's hit a quick pin on this again, because I have actually one last question when it comes to the Cavs and during All-Star Weekend, and we can just kind of empty your, I guess, quote-unquote notebook from your time there. But you know the rules. Paying the bills, ad time. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain and level your vehicle up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you want. And with eBay Guaranteed, fit your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, we're back. I am Evan Dammarell. This is Jackson Flickinger joining me to talk about his time in All-Star, because again, other than I saw Joe Vardon was on the ballot, like, I guess technically Cleveland-based writers, it was you and Joe, so...
Yeah, Joe was there. He did not go to any of Mitchell's press conferences or anything like that. He probably, I think he talked to Mitchell though, but I don't think that was not in like a public setting.
Yeah, it's
Joe
also,
has
he's
access
also,
that
he's also a
Jackson
national. He's a national writer, so like he's Cleveland based. But speaking of Mitchell, that's actually you're leading me into my question. How common were the questions about his future, or was it really not that big of a focal point for the Cavs or Mitchell during this just, national bonanza where everyone's coming in from every which way and just saying like, hey man, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay the Cavs or are you leaving?
Yeah, actually no questions. There were no questions that I saw from his public media availability. Could have been because I know he sometimes, these bigger national guys find time to talk to, guys like Donovan, where I'm not there. But most of the questions were about actually Louisville basketball, because that's close, because he went to Louisville and it's close to Indy. So there was a bunch of Louisville reporters there trying to get questions to all of the Louisville guys at the All-Star game. And that was probably the biggest, like, consistent questions besides like the influencers yelling, like, what's your favorite Doritos? How many 10-year-olds would it take to beat you in one-on-one? Like the stupid questions, which I will say there were some good answers to the 10-year-olds. How many 10-year-olds it would take to beat you in basketball? Donovan Mitchell said 50 to 100 because he could like shoot over them and stuff. Whereas Jokic said probably just one if the 10-year-old's good. So, I think I think we got some interesting answers on that. But yeah, so most of like the basketball questions were actually like Louisville related, which was interesting because I'm somebody who doesn't follow college basketball and definitely didn't follow Donovan when he was there. But it was definitely like there wasn't a lot of, it didn't feel like there was the speculation about his future that I think would have definitely been there if the Cavs didn't win 18 out of 20.
I think that's completely valid. And before we keep talking, how many 10-year-olds would it take to beat you in a game of 1-1? Well, are you taking the Jokic route, or are you saying 50 to 100, or just you're going to be the king of the 10-year-old hill?
I think I could beat two 10-year-olds, but if you throw a third one in there, I think I'm done. So that's what I would say. But if they're good, one. So
there you go. That's a good save. So you're saying you're better than Nikola Jokic, not as good as Donovan Mitchell. Okay, I like this.
The best part about Jokic's answer is he didn't even take a second. He was just like he heard it and was just like, one if they're good. Like didn't even didn't have to think about it at all. Where it's like,
it's not the first time he was asked this.
So that it was definitely the highlight was of non-Cleveland Cavs people. Definitely Jokic was definitely very entertaining. So when he wasn't answering questions in his native language because I couldn't understand them. So don't know how entertaining he was then. But
if you're fluent in Serbian, I'd be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's just another hidden Jackson quirk that we are learning as time goes on. But more so the fact, were you at All-Star when it was in Cleveland, like as a fan, or just like out and about in the city while it was going on?
I went to All-Star practice on Saturday, and I went to the Rising Stars on Friday.
Okay.
So that's what I did. It was very. Was there a big NBA like convention center type?
Yeah.
Event thing?
The way they broke it down in Cleveland is most of the events were at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. They had some stuff at the Wolstein Center, like the HBCU Classic and All-Star Practice and stuff. It wasn't at the Huntington Center Convention Center. It was like where the media workroom was, and like the media like merch stores, so like you could buy certain things that only media members could get. Like if you ever see me at a game, like the backpack I have is from the Cleveland All-Star Weekend, just because it looked really nice and it had a lot of pockets in it. But yeah, they had I'm not trying to like reveal what my wife works, but it's not far from my wife's office. But it was like one of the like auxiliary like rental spaces like they use for like parties or conferences or weddings or things like that, and they turned it into like that NBA pop-up, which had like food, drinks, games, a bunch of sponsored events, things like that. It's like they had something similar because but they didn't do like the G League All-Star game there like they may have done it in Indy.
Yeah, because I don't remember, like, it was in the convention center, but like the convention center was full with like a ton of stuff for fans to do, not just like, oh, come and like buy some merch. It was like they had basketball clinics there. They had like junior basketball clinics there. They had like a bunch of like autograph signing stuffs were there. There was a lot of like, come here like at 1:00. This event is happening at 3:00. This event is happening. So I feel like the Indianapolis one was a little bigger, and I think a lot of that has to do with like it was still COVID time.
Yeah, and like
it was.
Yeah, masking was kind of required during Cleveland's All-Star.
Right.
It's like so, I had to carry my vaccine card with me everywhere to like show it to them, saying like I'm clean, I promise.
Right, and like Donovan Mitchell, for example, he I think never left his hotel room in Cleveland because he got COVID. So we still had things like that happening. So I think the All-Star event in Indianapolis was a lot bigger, and I think that's one of the things that I think kind of is unfortunate about the timing of when it was in Cleveland was that it could have been a little bigger. But it was definitely like, I think Indianapolis showed out well. Like there was a lot of good fan, especially at like the free events where like they could, like normal fans could get to. I think it was a really well attended, well turned out. There's like Pacers stuff all around the city. Everyone was there wearing Pacers stuff. So it was really cool to see like the local support. I will say that I think the All-Star game could have been a little, I think they're pricing out the normal fan from the All-Star games even more than they were in Cleveland. Because I think I was looking at going to the All-Star game, but it was about $300 for a standing room ticket in Cleveland. And the cheapest seats that I could find on SeatGeek were about $400 for the All-Star game in Indy. And it wasn't like there was a lot of empty seats, but there was there was more empty seats than you would think for a All-Star game. And that doesn't reflect on Indy at all, because it's just like, I don't think a normal NBA basketball loving family is going to spend $400 for one seat to go to an All-Star game. So that's what I think is a little disappointing, is that I think some of the actual Pacers fans weren't able to go. And like when Halliburton was making his run in the first quarter, and then at the end in the fourth quarter, all the cheers were coming from like the 200 section, like the upper level, because that's where like the Pacers fans were. So I think that's a little disappointing that, one, there weren't more Pacers fans there because they were priced out, and two, that there wasn't Pacers fans in the lower levels too, because it would have been cool if it felt like Indy was able to really like show out for a game like they would do for like a Pacers game.
No, that was going to be my question, is like, how did maybe the energy compare? Because that's something I noticed from people online saying the crowd was just kind of like bleh during the All-Star game, or like the skills competition, dunk contest, 3-point contest, etc. Like, and I'm like, and then I noticed what you said, like, the cheapest seat I could find is $400, and I think that was the same complaint I had about Cleveland. It's just like there were not a lot of empty seats, but like some media were sitting in the traditional media section for Cavs games, is, you know where that's at, but like there was so much of us that they more or less like carved out a corner of Loudville and put in like a temporary structure that just had like card tables, and I think we used the seats from the actual arena to sit in. Yeah,
that's what it was for in Indy as well.
So like, but even I noticed, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of empty seats up here, and like it's just like, man, it is, like you said, like even if it's like like you're a family of four, like you're not going to shell out $1,600 plus fees and everything else just to go see the All-Star game. Like that is very unrealistic, especially if you're like, the price you're paying is like the equivalent of like nosebleeds. Like you're not going to really see much of the action unless you stare at the Jumbotron the whole time. And then you're like, well, I paid $1,600 to watch a very big TV when I could have paid $0 and just, watch it at home. But
right. And it's also like the game wasn't competitive. Fortunately, the game in Cleveland was competitive. So like you at least felt like you got a little bit more of your money. And I think, the game in Cleveland was awesome they brought out all the NBA's top 75 players, and Michael Jordan made an appearance, and that was like a big deal. Whereas in Indy, they didn't have the luxury of having that. So that's a little like, at least if you paid $300 in Cleveland or whatever, you got to at least experience that. Whereas in Indy, you knew you weren't going to experience that. So that's a little like, I feel like the NBA could do a better job of making those seats available for like true Pacers fans. So like you could bring your kid to a game. Yeah,
I totally get that. I'm sorry. I was just listening to what you said. But yeah, no, there's still changes. Speaking of changes, there's one like quick thoughts before we head out of here. How do you feel about them ditching the Elam ending and going back to the East-West format? I was not a fan of either when they made that call.
I like the East-West format more. I think Donovan said afterwards that like if you want it to kind of be a competitive game, you kind of have to have some semblance of normalcy, and having a locker room, having teammates that you know you're going to have going into the week, that provides that. Whereas in Cleveland, they knew who their teammates were going to be, but the last year in Utah, they decided before the game.
Yeah, that was a bit of a mess. Like, just
right.
It's going to be like an actual game of pickup where we pick people literally right moments before we tip off, and then we conveniently have the correct jersey for you to wear.
Yeah, so that was a little so Donovan was a big fan of that, and he said, like, if you want to kind of get a little more competitive, you kind of need to make it more like a regular game. So I'm fine with the East-West. So, like, the biggest problem with the thing with the All-Star game is that they never played defense. The thing was, like, 10 years ago, they just didn't shoot 95 threes. Whereas now these teams are just shooting, I think there was 160 combined three-point attempts in the game, something like that. Where, like, when you're shooting that many threes, you're going to have watching people shoot threes that are kind of uncontested isn't actually that exciting compared to, like, watching people dunk. And the amount of variance that's going to inevitably produce, like, the East just made a ton of threes and the West didn't really make that many threes. So that's why one team had 200 points and the other team was losing by 30. So you need to find a way to make it competitive so the last 5 minutes can be good, because that's really all that you want, because that's basically the amount of defense that they've ever played in the All-Star game, no matter if it was in the 90s, 80s, 2000s. Like, it wasn't like they were playing 48 minutes of defense. But the Elam ending, it definitely encourages that. But the problem is, like, against Utah, like, not against Utah, when it was in Utah, they weren't able to, like, it was so one-sided in the beginning that the Elam ending didn't really add anything because they were down by 25, something like that. So if you could find a way to guarantee it's competitive, I feel like they would have done it. One of the things that I will say is that I felt that the G League All-Star game was really exciting. And one, obviously they're G League players, but I watched the G League All-Star game the year before, and it was just a traditional 48-minute basketball game, and it was very bad. Like, it was basically like the same level of, like, the All-Star game, in the sense that nobody's playing defense, nobody's just taking, like, a lot of threes. So I think something like that, you're going to guarantee that you're getting, like, if you were to play, like, they ended up playing 3 games to 30. If you played 3 games to 30, you're going to get guys trying the whole time. The problem is that's not really that long. Like, each game was about 15 minutes of real time. So that's it. Like, that's a solution, but you're just bringing up more problems. So I'm not entirely sure there's a surefire way to save the All-Star game, but I think the biggest reason why the All-Star game is the way it is because the All-Star game has always been an exaggerated version of the NBA game. Whereas in the, before, when it was, like, more of a post-dominated game, or like a game that the best players were really good dunkers, you got All-Star games where everyone's dunking, and that's a lot more fun. Whereas now it's a lot more perimeter oriented, where now everyone's just making and taking a bunch of threes, and that doesn't create a entertaining game in this level. Even though I think the NBA game overall is better, I don't think you're, like, sacrificing this All-Star game. So
yeah, I totally agree. Well, we'll see what happens next year. It's in San Francisco, so maybe it'll be a little bit of a different change of pace if they don't go 3-pointer happy, just to spite the Warriors and their fans of something they're used to. But Jackson, thank you for your time. Tell everyone where they can find your work and what you've been doing, and maybe what you have down the pipeline, just to give them a little bit of taste of what's to come.
Yeah, so I'm going to have a story out about Imani sometime within a week, hopefully, for Down Euclid, and So I write after every Cavs game, unless I get sick like I did on Wednesday. I write a Cavalier conclusions where I basically just kind of try to boil down the game into like 600, 700 words and find like a different angle that you're not going to get elsewhere. So you can find that on Down Euclid after every Cavs game. So that's definitely what you should be checking out if you currently aren't. So please do that. And then I also have some work for Fear the Sword. So check that out as well.
Yeah, and I did not. We're in separate rooms. I promise everyone I was not holding a gun to Jackson when he was plugging his Down Euclid stuff. But thank you again for your time, Jackson. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for checking us out. Chris and I will be back Thursday and Friday this week Friday and Saturday this week to talk about the Cavs back-to-back. The game on Thursday, then the game on Friday. So, yeah, we'll be back then. The Cavs are almost back, folks. We don't have to listen to this silly season stuff. If you want to watch Doc Rivers continue to shoot himself in the foot, I sure do. But until then, I'm Evan. That's Jackson. Thanks for checking out Locked On Cavs, and have a good Wednesday.